So Johnny Herbert, the ex-Formula 1 driver, has had his say on the Verstappen mindset, his ethos, his philosophy when it comes to his racing conduct. And he has slammed him. He has said that it is a horrible mindset. So let's have a look at this. I do like Johnny Herbert. I did meet him a while ago. Oh, where was it now? It was the NEC event. Autosport, that's it, the Autosport International. Good guy, I like him. And he used to be someone who was prominent in the F1 kind of commentary and pundit world, basically, you know, in Sky Sports a few years ago, but since then he's no longer a part of it. But that's another story for another day. Let's focus on this one on the F1 Chronicle.com. Johnny Herbert has lashed back at critics like Max Verstappen's father, who believe certain FIA officials are biased against the triple world champion. Of course, Herbert is a regular steward for the FIA, so I imagine he took that quite personally. After the Red Bull driver was penalised 20 seconds for his on-track stoushes with title rival Lando Norris in Mexico, where former British F1 driver Herbert was on the stewards panel, Jos Verstappen aired his opinion to Dutch newspaper De Telegraaf. He said, and I quote, "Max is not going to adjust his driving style just because there are a few stewards who don't like him." Some believe Verstappen Sr. was clearly referring to Herbert, who will be back on duty this weekend in Brazil, but also Tim Meyer, son of McLaren co-founder Teddy Meyer. The FIA should take a good look at the composition of the stewards and who they put there, and whether there is any conflict of interest, for example, former drivers who have more sympathy for certain drivers or teams, Jos said. Red Bull advisor Dr. Helmut Marko thinks the stewards in Mexico wanted to make an example of Verstappen with their harsh punishment, including adding 2 penalty points to his super license. He said, and I quote, "The problem is that the stewards decide one way or another," he told the Österreich newspaper. "There is no clear line, there is no consistency. We don't necessarily need these ex-racing drivers, we need professional stewards, neutral people who make decisions based on fixed rules," Marko added. No, we absolutely have to have a driver stewards in there because they provide a driver's opinion, they're experienced at racing. Johnny Herbert is an excellent example of that, someone who won in Formula 1, someone who competed in Formula 1 in the 80s, 90s and the early 2000s as well. Excellent driver, you know, excellent driver back in his day. And had he not had his accident as well when he was racing in Formula 3000, I think it was at the time, you know, he might have become a world champion. People were talking about it back in the early 80s. Look it up, guys, if you don't believe me. That's how good he was. But yeah, as it was, he was still a really good driver despite those injuries. Herbert, however, hit back at both types of opinions, insisting the stewards simply follow the guidelines set down by the FIA when making decisions. He said, and I quote, there always seems to be an issue about us British stewards being biased," said the former Benetton Sauber and Jaguar driver. "But when we're in that room, we abide by the rules and guidelines from the FIA. To say it's biased is absolutely ridiculous and not the case. We try as hard as possible to be fair in our judgment. The issue is that the tactics we see on the track. The stewards won't change anything in Brazil. We have the guidelines and that's what we'll be sticking to. Yeah, if you don't follow the rules, then you're in trouble. You know, people will rightly say, why didn't you follow the rules?" Common sense sometimes does not apply to stewarding, unfortunately, when it comes to these. It's like referees in football. But they absolutely got the decision for Verstappen right, I think, in Mexico. And to be honest with you, I think he was lucky to escape with not even a harsher punishment. It could have easily been a stop-go penalty rather than just a time penalty like he had. But that's just my opinion. At least they punished him this time, that's the thing. And I understand the viewpoint that they might be wanting to make an example of him, but that example has been made by Verstappen himself. Like, he's done that to himself. He made the stewards make that decision. He was just trying to test the boundaries. It's been said many times with this. And this time, according to the stewards, for the first time in a while, he went over it. The 60-year-old says his opinion is also backed up by the F1 teams. "The decisions and penalties applied have been pretty much correct the whole season," said Herbert, who won 3 Grand Prix across his 12 seasons in F1. "Teams have come up with us after races and agree with our decisions." He did admit that he was personally appalled by Verstappen's driving last Sunday. "I am such a big fan of Verstappen and it frustrates me massively when he drives the way he did in Mexico. He doesn't need to do it. He's in a good cockpit and at a good point in the championship. He just needs to stay out of trouble and drive as well as possible. When Verstappen goes into this horrible mindset of trying to gain an advantage by taking a fellow driver off the track so that Ferrari can get the 1-2, that's where he needs to know he doesn't have to do that. Just win in the cleanest possible way you can. I wholeheartedly agree with you, Herbert, there. And I've said this many times on the show here, you know. Verstappen doesn't need to do these moves. He's in a dominant position in the championship. He's just got to see it through. The guy could finish in third every race, I think now, or second or third every race. And even if Lando wins every race, he'll still be the champion. He doesn't need to make these dumb moves. Simple as that. Because that's what it is. It's just dumb and dangerous. So for me, it's simple. It's absolutely simple. And I agree with Herbert wholeheartedly on this. You've got Christian Horner printing out sheets of data. You've got Jos saying, yeah, this is what Schumacher and Senna did back in their day. You know, my son's as good as him. Then he's going to keep driving like that. Great role model there, mate. what a daddy you are. And then you've got also Helmut Marko being like, oh, you know, they're just making an example of him. He did that to himself. The dude did that to himself. He didn't need the stewards to do that. People are absolutely wailing on the guy online, and rightfully so, within reason. I'm sure some people taking it too far, like always with the internet, but I absolutely get it. And I'm behind Herbert. I'm standing alongside him, just putting my arm around him and be like, you know what, mate, you've got it right here. I totally agree. He doesn't need to be doing this. But I'm not going to ignore the fact that there are sometimes problems with the stewards. The stewards do seem to be a bit inconsistent on things at times, and I think having the same stewards at every single race will eliminate that. But the suggestion from Marko that there shouldn't be a driver steward in there, an ex-driver, is absolutely ridiculous. You have to have that insight. You have to have that insight. I don't know what it's like to drive a Formula 1 car. I don't. But the F1 drivers all do. So that is a crucial piece of information. A key stakeholder in that discussion has to be someone who's been there and done that. But what do you guys think? What do you guys think? Am I being harsh on Verstappen? Is Herbert right? Or is Marko right and Jos Verstappen? I'll let you make your own minds up on that one. Let us know in the comments below as always. And for much more F1 news, opinions and reaction to this weekend's Brazilian Grand Prix, to keep it tuned right here to the F1Chronicle.com. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you very soon, guys. Have a good one.